This is class number 5 from Eating Out Without a Doubt. The past few classes we have focused on the importance of having a qualified, trained, and alert Mashgiach, which is on top of his game, and how many things can go wrong drastically, even if all the ingredients coming in are with a very good Hashgacha and are on a very high level of kashrus. If within the kitchen things are not kept under proper control by the Mashgiach, we discussed all the different things that can happen. So we can definitely understand how important it is to have a proper Mashgiach, which was properly trained and educated, and which is alert and qualified for the job. Today we're going to discuss how often a Mashgiach should be present. Should he be there from open to close? So when you visit a place, should you expect the Mashgiach to be there, or is he just going to pop in at once a day, twice a day? In addition, if we have time, we will also cover clarity of terms. Sometimes Hashgachos may certify something and say everything is Pas Yisrael, but they may have their own definition. So am I actually getting what I'm being told? So before getting into how often a Mashgiach comes in, we're going to first discuss the terms that exist out there when it comes to Mashgiach. The first term which we'll discuss is Mashgiach Tmidi, which means that there is a Mashgiach constantly there from when the place opens until it closes, and the Mashgiach is always there. He may at times step out for 10 minutes for a phone call or to quickly daven mincha if for whatever reason the Hashgacha gives him permission to go down with a minyan, but generally he's there all day from beginning to end, and that's obviously the highest level and the best to have. Next is you have something called the Mashgiach Yetziv Nichnas, which means there's the Mashgiach. When the Mashgiach comes in and comes out, he comes in a few times a day, sporadically, not on scheduled times, and he comes, he checks what's going on, and he basically does his thing and leaves. Now the question is, what happens the rest of the day? Sometimes the rest of the day, when there's no Mashgiach there, some Hashgachos will rely on either the owner, which is the owner of Shem Shabbos, will rely on him. So he's going to be the one that fills in during the times when Mashgiach is not there. Or they'll rely on a Shem Shabbos employee, and they'll rely on him to oversee that everything's kosher and everything stays kosher when the Mashgiach is not there. Or at times if it's a place that's hard to get Mashgiachim or Shem Shabbos people, they may rely on cameras when the Mashgiach is not there. And the cameras and the concept in halacha called mirtas, which means create a certain fear that the workers would not want to do something that would mess up the kashrus. And together with the cameras and the fear of the mashgiach coming in at any point sporadically, they have that system of mashgiach yetziv v'nichnas. Then there's, like we just mentioned, the idea of a Shem Shabbos owner. Any Hashgachos will feel comfortable. They have a Shem Shabbos owner. They trust him, and the mashgiach will come not once or twice a day, maybe once a week or twice a week, just to check to make sure things look okay. Some will have more often, some will depend if it's milchig or fleishik. And then you'll have a Shem Shabbos employee. You have an employee that's not officially a fully trained mashgiach, but he's a yid that keeps Shabbos and keeps kashrus, and he's enough to be around that he will make sure nothing not kosher happens. Mashgiach coming and checking in from the Hashgacha reinforces that, and together, that's the system that they have. So these are just general concepts before we go into it. Now we're going to go into it. Before starting what different Hashgachas out there hold, we're first going to start with what we know clearly from our Rebbeim. When it comes to Hashgacha and Mashgiach being present and relying on the owner, is it enough that there's an firm owner? Do we need a Hashgacha? Do we need a Mashgiach coming in? So we'll start. I'm going to share the screen. We're going to share the screen. First of all, there is a letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe that was written to Reb Aaron Rubashkin, which had a butcher shop in Borough Park, and Borough Park, and he was obviously producing meat. And the Frierdiker Rebbe writes to him the importance of having a Mashgiach Tmidi present, even if it's a firm owner. And we'll quickly read the letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe. This is found in the Frierdiker Rebbe's Igros Kodesh on Chelik Yud, and this is the letter of the number of the letter. And quickly, just to quickly, we'll briefly quote from the letter. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes, "Vadas Chassidic Chabad Nizarim b'Takana Misudara Mehoid Chak Rabbeinu Zaken." That the Chassidic Chabad are generally are careful to keep the takana that the Alter Rebbe made. V'chmiru b'hanagazu Hoid Chak Rabbeinu Kedoshim. All our rebbeim were machmer, were stringent in this matter. Kol echad b'zman as you said, each one when they were rebbes. What was the takana? That someone who his business is to sell meat, or if he's doing production, cooking meat, or doing, in this case, he was writing to Rabashkin about making this type of salami, basar mu'ushon, making smoked meats, varsht, or type of sausage. Even if somebody, the owner, is known to be a God-fearing Jew, Yedei Torah, and someone who studies and knows Torah, Bal Midas Chassidus, and he has midas that are stellar midas, Chassidus. Even such a person, Tzarich Mashgiach Tmidi, must have a Mashgiach Tmidi. And he writes, and therefore I hope that you're also going to have in your place. So it's clear from a directive from the Frierdiker Rebbe quoting that comes all the way from the times of the Alter Rebbe, that when it comes to a meat establishment, even if the owner is a very Erlich Yid, the Yeri Shemaim, and has very stellar midas and is a knowledgeable in Torah, all that is beautiful, but there has to be a Mashgiach Tzmidi. So that's one letter. Now, in regards to, in general, relying just on an owner, it's a firm owner, there's a Sikha from the Rebbe that's found in Sichas Kodesh, Tafshin Lamed Ches, Lag Baimer, Sicha Lag Baimer, and it's in Sif Tezvav, the Rebbe, we're going to read one paragraph here, they're Indian from Kashrus, Achila Shtia. The idea, the concept of kashrus when it comes to food and drink is a davar hachigol. It's an extremely important matter. And if them in order for that to properly happen, for something to properly be kosher, you need a rav hamachshir. And you also have to have a mashgiach and everything else that comes with it. It never existed among the Jewish people as that one will rely afabalabas just on the owner. Even if the owner is a real, true Yerushalayim, that was never something that we relied on. Number Daf Haben a Mashgiach, you must have a Mashgiach. Now it's not clear from the rabbis you have to have a Mashgiach at all times, Mashgiach Tzmidi, but definitely you have to have a Rav Machshir, you have to have a Mashgiach. There has to be just relying on the owner, even if he's a true Yerushalayim, is not the way things should be done. And so that's just starting with that. So, and obviously, based on the things we discussed, we could understand the importance of a mashgiach, and one of the first things that could happen also with the owner, he's so busy with his business and so many things going on. Even if he's given the responsibility of things he should be overlooking, he must be maybe overwhelmed with everything else and not even have a chance, or he may have to step out for something super important, and the place is not being supervised properly. So, among everything else, owner himself without a mashgiach is already unclear. But so far, we've made very clear that when it comes to meat, according to what the Lubavitchers have been keeping throughout the years, is that you need a mashgiach tmidi, and in general, for a place to properly be to properly be kosher, you want to have a rav machshir and a mashgiach, and not just rely on an owner. Now, out there in the kashrus world, there are very many different standards. Very common, the generally accepted standard by the reliable Hashgachos is that the moment there's active cooking in the kitchen, there has to be a Mashgiach or a frum person that's basically trained in what he needs to look out for uh, in the kitchen or there, so that if the fires turn off, if things happen, there's a frum Jew that's there to oversee it. That's a generally accepted thing. That's again active cooking. It doesn't matter if it's milchik, doesn't matter if it's fleshik, if it's parv, even if it's vegan. If there's active cooking, they're cooking, then there has to be because there has to be a mashgiach or a firm person because fires can turn off, things can happen. We need someone there to oversee that it remains kosher on a proper level. Now, when it comes to the owner, some hashgachas feel comfortable relying pretty much fully on the owner, and we'll check on him once in a while. Some hashgachas will take the approach. Again, we're talking about a Shem Shabbos owner, a trustworthy owner, that the owner could be there 49% of the time, but 51% of the time there has to be a Mashgiach. So that majority of the time there is a Mashgiach. Some take their approach that for meat, they don't trust the owner, even if he's a fully frum person. There has to be a Mashgiach or frum employee. But if it's a milking place, then the owner that's frum is okay. Some will only feel comfortable with the owner for owner in the milking place part of the time. So there's many different standards, but definitely if there's active cooking, should always be a firm person on site. Relying on cameras and mirtas and fear is only in cases, situations where there's no firm meat and it's hard to get a mashgiach in an out of town place. That's when you can start relying on that, but that definitely should not be in any a standard in a place which is keeping a higher level and which has access to mashgichim. Now, besides for that, there's a concept in Eretz Yisrael, it's a lot more common, something called a Ne'eman Kashrut, which means somebody that they trust in regards to kashrut because he is a Shomer Shabbos Jew, and that's what we spoke about before. A Shomer Shabbos employee, that is a lot more common in Eretz Yisrael. So you walk into the place, you ask for a Mashgiach won't be there, but they'll have a Shomer Shabbos Jew, and that person takes responsibility. So when you walk into a place, the first thing you want to ask is you want to speak to the Mashgiach. If they say Mashgiach's not there, I want to say, so who present takes responsibility for the kashrus? And there should be a firm person on site, even if it's the owner. The owner should be there. If someone from, you want to be able to. If there's nobody from and there's active cooking, that itself already is a big red flag, and you should first of all report it to the hashgacha, and second of all, should stay away and not eat in such a place because that itself really is very questionable. Now, even when the hashgachos do rely on the owners, they don't allow the owners to check lettuce because checking lettuce takes a lot of meticulous focus. The owner, it's usually on site, there's so much going on, his mind is not there, so they won't have the owner be checking lettuce. And besides for that, as well, like I mentioned, some hashgachos won't feel comfortable with the owner if it's a meat place. So now we're going to move on to the next subject, which we spoke about, which is, am I actually getting what I'm told? And a certificate could say Chal Yisrael, Pas Yisrael, and everything can sound perfect to my standard. Is that really what I would be keeping? So we'll go through some examples of things that to ask to know so that you are actually keeping the standard that you feel comfortable keeping and not something lower. So the first term which there could be confusion is when it comes to Pas Yisrael. So you look at the certificate, you're strict, you keep Pas Yisrael, it says Pas Yisrael, everything sounds nice. So where can things go wrong? So we can bring a few examples. First of all, when it comes to panko breadcrumbs, the way panko breadcrumbs are made in order to look so white and they shouldn't have they shouldn't look brown from let's say the crust of the bread. They electrocute the bread, and that by many hashgachas they don't consider that baked, so they don't consider it pas akum because it wasn't baked by a non-Jew or pas pater, and it's a unique way of preparing this bread, and therefore they hold that those such breadcrumbs don't fall into the category of being problematic, even for someone who is makbid to only eat pas Yisrael. However, not everyone accepts that, especially Hashgachos with a higher standard, like Hashgachos will not accept that. So someone who's trying to keep a higher standard Pas Yisrael may not want to consume that, and is not even going to be told unless they ask some more questions and ask the Mashgiach where the bread comes from. Come from? Are they Pas Yisrael or are they panko? That's one. Second is when it comes to breadcrumbs, there are even some hashgachas that will allow non-Pas Yisrael breadcrumbs, not panko, and they rely on the fact that the breadcrumbs will be deep fried. And by being deep fried, the frying will change the texture and taste of the breadcrumbs, and they consider that a way that the Jew embellished the breadcrumbs, and they'll consider that Pas Yisrael, so to speak. And not everybody accepts that either. So that's some examples of things that can actually not be Pas Yisrael. In addition, um, many hashgachas rely on a concept of a glow bar, which is a type of heating element that's put into an oven, and here the Mashgiach turns on that heating element, and they consider that any bread made afterwards, as long as the heating element was on, which can be on for months at a time, is Pas Yisrael. They consider that little additional heat like a splinter that's brought down in halacha, that a splinter could be thrown in by a Jew in order to make a Pas Yisrael. But not everybody feels comfortable with that. Not everybody accepts that, and not everyone was just trying to keep a higher standard of Pas Yisrael may accept that. So many breads coming into the restaurant may be considered Pas Yisrael and relying on the glow bar, and someone may not feel comfortable relying on that. So that's something else to look into. And the Mashgiach may not even know. He may know it says okay Pas Yisrael or Chavkei Pas Yisrael, and he says, I'm not sure. I know it's Pas Yisrael. So you may want to look more into it and see does the Hashgacha allow glow bar or not. In addition, many Hashgachas will allow par-baked breads to be baked again, or not baked again, but finished being baked in the restaurant and become Pas Yisrael. And there are different definitions of how much does the bread need to be finished to be considered Pas Yisrael. Some take a more of a lenient approach and are okay with a few minutes in the oven, even if the bread almost is already almost fully baked, and they hold a few minutes is okay. Some want a little bit more baking to consider Pas Yisrael. Another common item is soft pretzels. Many hashgachas won't feel comfortable if it's already fully baked. It just needs to be warmed up. Some will feel comfortable. So, or pizza crusts. Some say that since the pizza crust was supposed to go back in the oven with toppings, that means it's not fully ready, and therefore, by the mashgiach putting it in the oven, the mashgiach turned on will become Pas Yisrael. So there are many gray areas as to making breads that are not Pas Yisrael and not 100% fully ready to eat, if they actually become Pas Yisrael or not, the amount of time, and all that are questions that one, first of all, needs to clarify with their Rav, what should be their standard. And only once they know, they can approach and ask and know what to be asking. And sometimes a certificate can say Pas Yisrael, but there will be exceptions, and they don't write the exceptions. Very common example is fortune cookies, that they may say Pas Yisrael, but in truth, the fortune cookies themselves are not Pas Yisrael. So all this is things that one need to look out for. This is just with one term. In the future classes, or sometimes just one more example, tortilla wraps. When it comes to tortilla wraps, at times some hashgachas will make that exception. Not that they consider it Pas Yisrael, but they can't get other wraps, and that will be an exception. But the exception is not mentioned in the certificate unless you ask. You won't know. So sometimes, even if the certificate says Pas Yisrael, there will be exceptions like fortune cookies or tortilla wraps, which are not Pas Yisrael at all. So therefore, one should first of all know their own standard, what they want to keep for Pas Yisrael, as well as to ask and know what the standard is at the restaurant and clarify that.